Hi, I'm Gary Edwards. I'm going to introduce you a little bit to concours judging of 129 vehicles. Now, 129s don't have a lot of issues that we generally see, but the most prominent lack of authenticity in 129s is wheels. And we're sitting here with a randomly selected assortment of 129s, and 4 of them have the correct wheels on them. And so I just want to point out the one in front of the SL600 was supposed to come with monoblock 2s, and this car actually has later AMG wheels on it. The SL320 in front of me has the correct wheels, which are the Mercedes 8-spoke wheels. It's a 94, and that's the correct wheel for this car. If you pan farther to the left, the silver car here is a 98 Sport Edition, and it's got the correct monoblock 2 wheels on it. The car beyond it also has the correct, let me get to the other side of the camera. The car beyond it also has the correct 8-spoke wheels on it. That is a 93 300 SL. Now, if you go down the line over here, we have a 2001, and it's got the right wheels, but they're chromed. The one beyond it has is a 91, and it has a set of aftermarket wheels on it. The one beyond that, I think, is a 96, and it has a set of aftermarket wheels on it. In the far one, which is a 91, has the correct, I think they're 16-hole wheels, the wheels that kind of look like manhole covers. And so when you're doing authenticity on a 129, look at the wheels and see if they're the right wheels for the car. And now I'm going to shift topics a little bit. The other thing on 129s to look at is the hood insulation inside the hood. There's a lot of variety in what you see under the hood on a 129. For example, this is a V12 SL600, and this one is at the end of its life for the hood insulation. So you open the hood and you see this dust on the engine, and that tells you the hood insulation's bad. Otherwise, the cars don't have a lot of issues that you typically see. Most people leave these in a stock configuration. You'll see a little bit of discoloration around the cam covers on the V12s especially. But otherwise, the cars are fairly straightforward. If you look around the cooling lines that go into the windshield washer reservoir, you'll usually see these little grommets will have shrunk. And that's a pretty easy repair too. And of course, the standard hose clamp things, they all use regular Mercedes hose clamps. But there's not a lot of issues that you see with these engines. I'm going to close this one and go to a 6-cylinder over here. Now this is a 94, so it's an M104 engine, and this one almost doesn't have any hood insulation on it at all. But what I wanted to point out to you is how different the engine compartment looks of the 6 versus the 12. I mean, this is a factory configuration M104 HFM injected 6-cylinder engine. And this one's in pretty good shape. What you usually see on these is the paint covering on the cam cover here starts flaking off on you. And you almost can't do anything about it except repaint the whole thing. So you'll often see that as a deficiency. Again, I pointed out the grommets around the cooling or the heating pipes into the windshield washer reservoir. That's same on this car as well. They really don't have a lot of issues, and people don't end up doing a lot of aftermarket sort of incorrect repairs. I did mention the hood insulation. At this age, all of these cars are going to need their hood insulations replaced, and this one is due for it. Also, the other piece that you see here in the firewall insulation in the back, this will eventually get abraded and wear. And see that there's discoloration on this hood firewall insulation in here. And this is a 94. It still actually has a dipstick. The other cars, as they get newer, the Mercedes eliminated the dipstick, and what you see is a little tab in the top of the dipstick tube. And if the tab is still black, it probably means no one's ever actually checked the transmission lubricant. If you see a red little tab in there, it probably means they have. And I don't really like to see these cars where no one's ever checked the transmission lubricant, because it was a life of the transmission fluid, and if you don't change the fluid, the life isn't very long. Okay, let's shift to the interior. Now, these cars don't have a lot of problems. However, you will almost always see seat bolster wear, and the newer cars are worse than the older cars on that. This car has 127,000 miles on it, and you see it's starting to show some wear in the seat bolster. The other thing you often see on these cars, you see right beside me here, the seat belt is kind of crinkling itself up along the seat. And that's fairly common for these cars, and it's certainly a Concours deficiency. The other thing you see on these is that the pieces around the sun visor, where the sun visor attaches to the windshield frame, will pretty much always crack, and in some cases they're going to be missing. And so the perfect Concours car will not have cracks in these plastic pieces. The other thing that you often see on these cars is that I'm going to sit down in the driver's seat to point something out. The right side control for the vents will often break off. I've never seen the left side break off, but the right side often breaks off. And the other thing you see is that the little button to release the center armrest will usually break off and will not be present. And it's actually a really cheap repair, and so I'm disappointed when I do judging on a car and see that that's not present. The other obvious things to look for on these is cracking of the wood. The wood will eventually crack, although 129s are new enough that you don't see that much of it. And often you'll see these little door, the little locking door side pieces here end up being damaged and sit up some. The other thing you can see sometimes is the wood delaminates from being wet. This side is off a little bit here, and it's a little bit discolored. And on this particular car, the other side is really delaminating, I think because someone left the windows down when it was wet. You can also find issues with the fit of this little piece that goes over the mirror. It's only held on by a couple of plastic prongs, and people often break these prongs off when they are removing them, and so they often don't fit well. This car, in fact, has had one of these prongs glued back in so that it actually fits correctly. All right, let's just look a little bit at the top on this car. Now, this is a factory original top. What you see as they start to get older is you see wear in the fabric in this area and in this area, but you see that this still has the three-pointed star. The top has to fold to go down, and so they will all develop cracks in this area eventually, and this one has incipient cracks right in this area. And in fact, some of the other cars here also have that. That's just going to happen, and you have to take off for it accordingly without overly penalizing it. The other thing you'll see on these cars is door dings. This car has a tremendous amount of door dings, and you can only see it if you shine the sunlight off of it the right way. But as I mentioned in the Concours training course, you can't just take a quarter off every door ding, because with the amount that are on this car, you wouldn't have any points left for the rest of the car. Now, the trunk area, you should see the storage compartment for the wind deflector, and it's perfectly acceptable for the wind deflector to be in the position that this one's in, which is installed on the roll bar. But for Concours, you should expect to see the storage compartment. This one does not have it in it. And the trunk, one of the things that happens back here is the tabs on the rear fuse box cover come off and break, and so the rear fuse box cover is either missing often or hanging down. And often you see the little covers like this that go on to cover the access to the rear bow clips for the hydraulics. Often these are missing or falling down. But otherwise these are really pretty bulletproof cars, don't have a lot of issues, and they should be pretty straightforward to judge. One thing I wanted to mention to you is about authenticity. This car is an interesting study of non-authenticity, because if you look at it, you may not notice anything. But one of the things I had mentioned was that these are really not the correct wheels for the car. This is a 1999. Now, if it was a 2001, these would be okay, but these are not the correct wheels for 1999. And then if you look at, it's an SL600. Now, it's got something that says engine by Mercedes Benz here. This is not correct for the car. It's a sport, so sport's okay. I think this V12 is okay. That's not okay. The other thing you see on this car, and I've never seen it on another one of these cars, is a teeny little spoiler here. I mean, it looks perfect, and there was a time I thought that maybe 99 sport models had this little spoiler. I've subsequently never seen one of these, so I think this must have been some type of dealer installed item. But so I would probably take off for this in a Concours. In the back of this car, it's got the correct SL600, and it says V12 over here, which you could perhaps debate, but it's got a sticker over here that says Mercedes Benz powered, which is not correct for this car. It should not have this sticker, and the V12 is kind of debatable. The other piece that's a little odd on this one is it's got a very dark tint all the way down the windshield about this far, which is not something I've ever seen on this car before. It is interesting that the rain sensing actually works correctly on this car, so the tint doesn't interfere with that, but it's not. That's also not the way it came from the factory. Additionally, when you open up and look at this one, you notice that it's got sheepskin seats. Now, they look perfect on the car. I've never seen another one like this, and I am pretty certain, especially since I've seen the option code for this car, that this is not an original seat material for this car. And so when you walk up to the car, I mean, it looks fine, but there's a lot of little authenticity issues on this one that you'd probably want to deduct for in a Concours.